A chance encounter that changed everything. Some turning points walk toward us quietly, disguised as ordinary moments. They slip into our lives without warning, without ceremony, without any hint of the impact they're about to have. But later, when we look back, we realize everything began right there, in a moment we almost overlooked. We often believe our careers evolve through planning and strategy. Yet some of the most defining shifts come from encounters we never anticipated. In a world shaped by fast transitions and unpredictable opportunities, understanding how these moments unfold has never been more important. To see this clearly, we return to a day that started like any other. They were moving through their routine, distracted by deadlines and decisions, carrying the quiet pressure of someone trying to build a future step by careful step. Nothing about that morning felt unusual. Nothing hinted at change. But life often hides significance in the familiar. They were on their way to a meeting when it happened, an interruption in the flow of the day, a brief interaction, a stranger's question, a conversation that shouldn't have mattered, and yet it did. Something about that exchange carried a spark, subtle but unmistakable, as if a hidden door had been shown to them for the very first time. At the time, they didn't understand why it stayed with them. It was just a few words, a comment, a moment of connection. But as the hours passed, the encounter kept returning to their mind, tugging at their curiosity with a gentle persistence. It felt like the beginning of something, though they couldn't yet see its shape. What they didn't know was that this small moment would become the first thread in a story that would unravel their assumptions, reshape their ambition, and redirect the course of their entire career. The moment replayed in their mind throughout the afternoon, refusing to fade into the background like so many other conversations did. There was something about the stranger's perspective, simple, confident, unfiltered, that struck a chord they hadn't expected. It wasn't advice. It wasn't guidance. It was more like an invitation to consider a version of themselves they had forgotten. As the days moved forward, the encounter continued to echo. It showed up in quiet moments, nudging them to re-examine choices they believed were already settled. They found themselves questioning routines they once accepted without hesitation. They noticed a shift in how they viewed their own work, its purpose, its limits, its potential. Still, they tried to push the feeling aside. After all, how could a brief conversation with a stranger hold so much weight? Life doesn't rewrite itself in minutes. Careers don't pivot on passing interactions, or so they told themselves. But deep down, they sensed that something had taken root, something that felt both unsettling and strangely hopeful. The conflict grew quietly. A part of them clung to familiar patterns, to plans built over years, to identities shaped by habit. Another part kept returning to that spark from the encounter, a sudden awareness that their path might hold more possibilities than they had ever allowed themselves to imagine. These two forces collided within them, creating a tension they struggled to name. That tension intensified when the encounter led to a second unexpected moment. A message, an invitation, a question that mirrored the stranger's words in a way that felt too aligned to ignore. It was as if the world had placed a marker in front of them, pointing toward an unexplored direction they hadn't dared consider. And for the first time, they wondered whether the encounter wasn't random at all, but the beginning of a shift waiting to happen. The possibility that the encounter wasn't random unsettled them more than they expected. It introduced a sense of momentum, as if life itself had nudged them forward. Yet, with that momentum came an undercurrent of fear. Change, even in its earliest form, carries a weight that's hard to ignore. The message they received lingered at the edge of their thoughts. It wasn't dramatic or demanding. It simply offered a chance to explore something new, something outside the borders of the career they had built piece by piece. The invitation felt both thrilling and uncomfortable, like stepping toward a door they weren't yet sure they should open. They found themselves torn between the safety of the familiar and the pull of the unknown. Staying where they were meant preserving a stable identity. Moving forward meant becoming someone they weren't sure they were ready to be. The conflict created a quiet tension that followed them through their days, shaping their decisions in ways they didn't always notice. The more they tried to dismiss the encounter, the harder it became. Memories of that brief moment seemed to surface at unexpected times, a line for the conversation, a tone, a question that had cut deeper than they realized. It was as if the stranger had seen something in them they hadn't yet seen in themselves. That thought alone carried an emotional weight powerful enough to challenge their certainty. As weeks passed, a new kind of restlessness grew. Their familiar routines no longer grounded them. Instead, they felt like constraints, reminders of the life they were expected to maintain, rather than the life they were beginning to imagine. Yet imagining wasn't enough. The internal struggle intensified as they tried to reconcile two competing truths: their loyalty to what they had built and their longing for something more expansive. This tension reached its peak during a quiet evening, when they finally allowed themselves to confront the deeper question hiding beneath the encounter. It wasn't about the stranger or the message, or even the opportunity. It was about the uncomfortable realization that the life they were living might no longer be the life that fit. And once that truth emerged, everything else began to shift. The truth unsettled them, but it also clarified something essential. They realized the encounter had not altered their path. It had revealed it. The conversation, the message, the invitation were simply mirrors reflecting a future they had quietly outgrown yet never dared to imagine. And once they saw themselves clearly in that reflection, standing still no longer felt possible. So they answered the invitation, not with certainty, but with curiosity. What followed was not a dramatic leap, but a series of simple steps that slowly gathered momentum. A meeting led to an introduction. An introduction led to a collaboration. A collaboration opened a door they had never known existed. At each stage, the world seemed to respond to their movement, expanding in ways that felt both surprising and deeply aligned. The encounter became the anchor point of a transformation that unfolded with increasing clarity. They discovered strengths that had waited in the background, ready for the right moment to emerge. They found purpose in work that demanded more creativity, more courage, more authenticity than their old path ever required. And with each day, the life they had once accepted without question began to feel like a distant chapter. Looking back, they understood the power of small moments. Lives change not through grand events, but through subtle intersections. Two paths crossing briefly, a conversation offered at the right time, a spark that becomes impossible to ignore. The world shifts quietly, then suddenly, and what once felt fixed begins to move. And in the end, it was clear. That chance encounter hadn't been accidental. It had been the opening note of a story that would redefine their entire career. So, what do you think? Are we repeating the same mistake again?